This is the Real Wealth Podcast, where we explore all things wealth related. Join us on this wealth journey. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. This week I'm joined with Robbie MacIsaac, 22-year-old entrepreneur, owner of Flux blowpipes, product design engineer, winner of numerous entrepreneurship awards, recent Dragon Den candidate, and probably one of the only men in the world to be able to say that he's had both Deborah Meaden and Zara Davies blown on his bagpipe. Welcome, Robbie.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Alex.
Thanks for coming along. And, you know, the thing that I love to see, and we try and surround ourselves with as many young entrepreneurs, mainly because Laurie and I are jealous that you guys are getting started so much earlier than we did. You know, we look at where we are now. If we'd started at your age in our 20s, it'd be incredible to think where we could be. So I'm really excited for you to be at the level you're at this young age. It's incredible. And we come from relatively similar backgrounds. We're both from the same sort of area, and we've probably been through a similar education system. So I think the first question for me is, what has got you to this point so early on in your journey? What has led you down a route of entrepreneurship straight out the gates, with instead of going through the standard get a job and, you know, build up from there?
I think for me it all started when I started actually playing the bagpipes. The bagpipes it's a really, really competitive instrument. I started playing when I was 9 years old. Started competing, started travelling. I've been to play shows in Germany, Switzerland, France, New Zealand, played the bagpipes everywhere. And that pays. So when I was very young, I got a bit of taste for some pocket money, and I was out busking.
Cash.
It's brilliant. The busking rates are good. I used to go busking for an hour or two and come away with 300 quid. You know, and when you're...
Is that something you were naturally okay with doing, or were you stretching your comfort zone? Because, like, standing up in front of a crowd of people playing music, it's not the easiest thing for most people, right?
It's difficult. And I remember when I was younger, I was always quite a shy kid. You know, I used to go to cry going to birthday parties and stuff. And then it wasn't until I started the bagpipes and I realised I was good at something that built a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And I think it all stemmed from there: performance, high pressure, and getting a taste of exchanging a skill for money, something you're good at. And that's really what I think kickstarted my journey into wanting success.
That obviously led on to Flux blowpipes. You had a passion for the bagpipes. You've seen a problem and an opportunity there. So tell us a bit about that and your business and how you've grown that.
When I was 14 years old, I was competing at Highland Games, and I'd never ever had any issues with condensation in my bagpipes at all. So what condensation does for the bagpipes is it makes them sound like a screaming cat, that kind of stereotype.
Oh, awesome.
And it can crack the wood, and it can damage the instrument. And when you've got an instrument worth $5,000, and it has a crack, my pipes are over 100 years old. You know what I mean? So that's really hard to replace or repair to a good standard. So I had all these different solutions that were on the market already for moisture control, and nothing worked. I was doubling up and tripling up. So at that stage, I was getting interested in engineering and design. I wanted to be an engineer, and I just got a bit of wood from my dad's garage, had an idea, made it up, no drawings or anything, and the concept worked. So that's when I was 14, and I developed this kind of in my spare time throughout school. Had a bit of support from the school, and when I was 18, I kind of won a few prizes for engineering, a bit more recognition, like the UK's most innovative young engineer, and a few engineering scholarships and things. So I leveraged that, and when I was 18, I pitched for some funding, and I got 15 grand from Scottish Edge. I was the winner of the Wildcard Edge Award.
Yeah.
And then that really allowed me to finalise prototype, get it to market, and then there was a few other prizes in the year after to support that growth. But that's how the product got to market. And recently I've launched another product. So now it's all about, I've established that brand in the market as a piper, as an engineer, and as a businessman.
Yeah. So
now I'm just growing this product range, showing the innovation, and making sure there's a lot of prestige behind there and trust behind the brand.
So you've come from an angle of you recognise the problem, you created a solution to it. You've got an engineer in mind. Obviously, you went straight to the solution, created the product. How do you bridge the gap from having this product to creating a business and getting to the next level at such a young age? Because, you know, there's a lot of different elements going on there, from funding to cash flow management to business to how to market and sell. You know, you've got that one thing down, the engineering. How do you get the skills for the rest of it?
I think there's been a lot of mistakes also, because when you're 18 years old and you get 15 grand in the bank to run a business, and you've not got a product yet, you've not got any product there, that's like the kind of route I went into business. I got introduced to someone at Scottish Enterprise. I spoke to them, they said I should pitch for this money, and it was very commercial. And when you're in that environment, you neglect the early stages of being an entrepreneur and being like, right, I need to just learn how to do this myself. So I had 15 grand and I was like, let's get someone in to do marketing, and I've not even got a product yet, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of mistakes there, and that's what people don't speak about when it comes to managing cash flow. And now I've realised that today I do all the content in my own business now, because it takes me 4 hours one Sunday a month and I get like a few months content, you know? And that's a lot more kind of cash efficient for my business right now. But I think it's the kind of mistakes that allowed me to grow the business and push the brand, and a lot of resilience as well, because I launched during COVID and sales were like this, and then they were like stagnant. I think there was 2 months or 3 months I went without a sale. And that was really difficult, because when you've been working on something when you're 14, as soon as that happens, which is consistent across the market, you instantly think, I'm a failure, my product's not very good, XYZ, and then you get imposter syndrome almost, you know? So it's building out with that, and everyone still gets that today. But I think that's what's kind of allowed me to continue to grow the business and have a lot of success with it.
I think to get those lessons though at such a young age through that process is fantastic. You know, it starts you off in a really good way. You know, we talk a lot about kind of your net worth, your network being your net worth, and who helped you through this journey? Have you had any mentors or anybody that you've been able to pull on through the process, or have you just been kind of dodging away trying to figure things out for yourself? Or
a bit of both. I've had a lot of formal support through the RBS Accelerator. So that's when they take entrepreneurs and they nurture them for 18 months and you get office space and workshops. And that was incredible. So I had a mentor there called John Willoughby, and he was absolutely brilliant, because not a lot of people understand the bagpipe business if you're not a bagpiper. They don't really get the product. They just realise that that's the problem, you've got the solution, and how you're making money from it. So John maybe came from like a place of naivety, but experienced in business. So he gave me an incredible amount of wealthy experience and knowledge on how to tackle my problems. I thought that was really good. Other than John, I never had a lot of other support besides Strathclyde University. Again, I'm still at university. They were really, really good. Again, another accelerator program, a guy called Alan Ferry. Great guy, a lot of support, again, getting me connected. And other than that, a few family members and things like this were really good advice too.
So if you were speaking to someone who was at the start of their entrepreneurship journey, who was just about to get started, what advice would you give them? What tips, what kind of hacks would you give to get started in your journey?
Just get surrounded by the right people. And that doesn't mean, I need a mentor. I need to find someone that's going to mentor me. There's lots and lots of different groups and things like the RPC and things like this. If you're looking to get into property, brilliant area for a lot of expertise and a community. It's about surrounding yourself with people that are on the same journey as you, and they'll understand your problems.
Through your journey, and there is a wealth of information in there. I think that's the thing, you know, if you've got an internet connection, you know, you don't necessarily have to have someone in the room helping you. If you've got an internet connection, you've got access to a wealth of knowledge, all these sort of communities on Facebook, you've got thousands of podcasts. The information is endless. It's about targeting, you know, what information is going to push you forward, and getting surrounded by people who have kind of been through the journey and know what they're doing and can point you in the right direction. So I think that's massively helpful. Is there any sort of books that you've read on your journey towards entrepreneurship that you think have been really valuable or helped? Or you've taken nuggets away, you thought, right, that's perfect?
There is. It wouldn't be so early stage when I was getting into business and entrepreneurship and really jumping into it. Everyone reads your standard kind of self-help, maybe financial books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and things, and we spoke about that before. But more recently, I think more importantly, I've been trying to broaden my literature a little bit. And think more about how you control yourself as an entrepreneur. I know Laurie speaks a lot about the chimp paradox. It's a really good book. Atomic Habits, again, these are kind of staples. Most recently I've been reading a bit of Stoicism, and it's completely different, but really interesting. A lot of the lessons and the beliefs and the values. It's not so much how to conduct yourself in business, but it's all the kind of traffic in your mind when you're running a business, or you're trying to grow your business, or in any aspect of life, trying to achieve something. There's a lot of tips in here that have really helped me so far halfway through this book, that are really interesting.
Yeah, I think, Laurie's, we talked about that in the podcast with him, that he's kind of our resident mindset coach. He's read all of these books on mindset. He's picked up the tips and habits that have really helped to push him forward. For me, it was the 5 a.m. club was a big one, Robin Sharma, and it just gives me a really, you can condense it down to this 20-20-20 formula, where it's an hour in the morning you take for yourself, or you take 20 minutes to exercise. When you wake up, cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone, are at the highest. Do a bit of exercise, brings that down, wakes you up. So not only are you up early, you're awake. Next 20 minutes of sort of visualization, meditation, whatever kind of gets you in the right frame of mind, or simply just planning out your day, what it's going to look like, what the high value added activities are going to be in your day, and then this 20 minutes at the end of sort of learning and furthering your knowledge. And genuinely, if you make that a daily habit, you go into work ready for the day, and your mindset is 100% better. And it's really hard to explain how that can translate to better results, but you can only discover it through actually going through the process and figuring it out. But for me, that works. Laurie's got a long list of activities he does from 4 a.m. in the morning before he gets out the door at 8 o'clock. So different strokes for different folks, but there's so many of these books out. But I guess the fundamental point is, with a lot of it, it's not just about learning how business works and how to run a business, how to grow a business, all that sort of stuff. It's about how to manage yourself, because everything starts from self-understanding. The fact is, I know that I'm not overly gregarious, I'm not a big sales guy, that's not my skill. So I partnered with someone who has those complementary skills, and you start from a basis of, this is me, this is what I need, know myself, so I can manage myself going forward. Exactly.
I think there's a lot between the mind and body that are linked to running your business, or just everyday tasks. There was a good quote I can think of there to kind of wrap up everything you've said perfectly, and it was most recently, it was a Stoic that said it, and it was, a life unexamined is a life unlived. And I think when you exactly, and I think when it's really hard to sit down and think and manifest sometimes, or reflect, or practice like gratification and stuff, but again, a life unexamined is like a life unlived, because you're not tapping into those areas, you're not facing the hard truths that are going on in your mind. I don't know, that I thought that kind of summed up what you said there quite nicely.
Absolutely. So many people fall into habits on a daily basis of just going through the day. I need to go to work, I need to go home, I need to make dinner, I need to put kids to bed. All these sort of programmed activities that don't necessarily move your life forward. And until you examine your own life and understand, what is it that's going to make me happy and drive happiness in the long term for me and the people that are important to me, then you can start putting a plan together around it, and you'd be amazed at the amount of time you can create when you have a goal that's worth striving for. Another really great book that I was reading recently is called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and fundamentally it's just understanding that when you have a very strong why, a very clear vision of what it is you're trying to achieve, the life that you want, then the actions to get there become just part of the process. It doesn't become this massive hurdle. It just becomes, right, I need to do these things to get to where I want to be. And if your why is big enough, then any actions you need to take to get there are just incidental, So
100%.
The mindset stuff is so fascinating, so important, and again, just so many people get stuck in this rhythm of life where essentially they're not living, they're not achieving, they're not looking for anything, out of their future. So it's really cool that you're getting to this stage. When I was in my 20s, certainly in my early 20s, I was just interested in making a bit of money, starting a nice car, just going out with my mates all the time, not really thinking about the future and how about wealth and how the things that I wanted out of life ultimately. So what is the big driver in your life at this age to be super focused and not out on the piss every weekend? You're managing suppliers and stock and sales and all that sort of stuff.
I think I don't know, maybe a bit to do like with my upbringing. I don't come from a poor family, but it's that my parents have always worked incredibly hard, like full time. My mum's a nurse, my dad's an engineer, and they're always out. And I've got 2 older brothers, so we've never had, like, for example, when I'm at university and stuff like this, like living away from home, my parents have never given me a penny, and I kind of take pride in that. And because I've always had a part-time job as soon as I finished my last exam in school, I worked in a pub, and then I worked in Tesco for 2 years and stuff like this. I was a delivery driver. Like, I've always tried to make my kind of own way, and I really take a lot of pride in that. And there's frustration sometimes around that, but you just need to get on with it, man. You know, like, you need to just get out there and kind of make your own way in my circumstances. So I think that's like a big part of it, to prove to myself. But right now it's strange being young, and it's interesting to be here and speak to you about this, because like getting into property, that's my ultimate goal in order to build real wealth. But right now that's kind of a difficult challenge for me as an individual who's been a student as such, but as a business owner, it's like we spoke about this before, it's been trapped in a system where I don't qualify for lending if I can't raise a massive amount of cash, you know? I don't qualify for lending. If I wanted to start a company right now, bit more difficult, because I'd maybe need to have like my dad on the books or something like this in order to get, and that's like the kind of challenge. So right now I've kind of toned it back a bit, and my focus is to make myself as credible for lending as possible and raise as much cash as possible, you know, just trying to make my own money, big massive pot. And then the time when I'm like maybe a year or 2 down the line from now, then I can just hit the ground and go absolutely nuts with it, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a sensible approach. I mean, there always are ways where you can list the problems, review them, and say, right, okay, how am I going to tackle it? Because there's always a loophole. But it is a sensible approach, because the other thing, I guess, starting out is you can have too many shiny things syndrome, where there's just too many options to build wealth, and you know, you've put a lot of effort into Flux and building that business, and things are really starting to get traction now. So it's like not being attracted by the next shiny thing, which, to be honest, Laurie and I still have a bit of, because we'll get opportunities left, right and centre to buy this business or look at this thing, and you know, really trying to stay focused on what the core of your business is until it's at a point where you can say, okay, right, I've got that leverage now to look at other things. You know, we probably made a bit of a mistake with that, with the first choice external home like home improvement stuff, because you know, we have a core business of doing refurbs and buying property and below market value and building our buy-to-let portfolio, and that was just a bit of an outlier and probably never got the attention that it should have. So you know, you make these mistakes as you go and you grow. So you know, obviously you've got Flux, you've got that focus, you've started to look into property, and that's where we met. I mean, you know, Laurie and I were super impressed when you and Ryan came in to meet us, because you know, just 2 young guys just talking a different way to people your age, and a million miles away from where we were at that age in terms of mindset. You're just so much further on your journey. So you know, that was really cool. So I've kind of seen a bit of your journey over the last few years, and obviously Ryan, your mate, came to work with us, and he's been fantastic, a great addition to our business. Flux, you're clear what you're doing with that, you're growing that business, you're moving it forward. Are there any other areas of entrepreneurship, any other businesses that you think maybe long term that's where you're going to be focused? Obviously you mentioned the property as a potential strategy, but is there anything else that you've got your eye on, or is it just all focused on Flux and building that?
I really like what you guys are doing in terms of acquisitions, and I've done a bit of reading along with Ryan and stuff on mergers, acquisitions, different ways to build. Again, it's like you're building wealth, you know, you're increasing your equity position, and that's really powerful in building a business. I'd quite like to replicate that maybe in the bagpipe industry, you know, maybe acquire a few bagpipe businesses and grow Flux, and then use that equity and put it into property. And there's loads of different ways, you know. I think right now, as a youngster, it's too easy to have shiny thing syndrome, as you're saying, and there's a lot of different avenues to make money. And right now it's for me like pinpointing that, taking a step back and being like, in the next 2 to 3 years, how do I use my time efficiently so that I'm not just chasing, going around in circles. And that's the point I'm coming to now, and it's really, really interesting. Again, makes you change your mindset on things. But other than that, property, I think it's really, really exciting to me.
It's an obvious one. You know, it's a really interesting point talking about mergers and acquisitions thing, because you know, a lot of people think if they're going to, you know, get into entrepreneurship, start a business or own a business, you know, you have to start from zero. Whereas the reality is there's a lot of people out there that have spent their lifetimes building businesses, and they get to retirement age, and the kids don't really want involved in it or whatever, and they're trying to find an exit for their business. And when you look at a lot of these businesses, they may have a lot of potential that's unrecognized. But also, usually when you look at the financials of them, you say, well, you're making a bit of money, that looks good on paper, it's maybe worth this amount based on a 10 times multiplier of the profitability of the business. But in reality, when you look at it and say, well, actually the director's only taking dividends, he's not taking a salary, I'd have to employ someone to run that business, so that's another salary, it means you're not making that much money and the business isn't worth as much as you think it is. That's where it gets interesting to start negotiating over those types of businesses, because what you can tend to find is you can acquire an existing business that's got a track record for a fairly small amount of money, and you can even pay the previous owner out over a longer period of time through the cash flow of that business. So a lot of people think, acquisitions, you need to put a big lump of cash on the table, you can only buy a business when you're liquid and you've got loads of funds. It's not the case. There's a million ways you can structure these things, and when you understand the ins and outs of that, then it can be really, really cool. So I mean, that's a really interesting strategy, especially in the bagpipe industry, because it's going to be quite a niche. Someone selling a bagpipe business is not going to have a massive queue of people that it's going to make sense to get into that business for you. You've developed a niche, you've started to build your brand around it, and extending that through acquisition could be a really cool way to grow.
100%. I think there's a lot of scope to even grow fast in the bagpipe industry. For example, one of the bagpipe companies in Scotland, they turn over about 12 million a year just from brand new sets of bagpipes. And these are like brand new customers to the market. And the bagpipe product market, like your bags and your reeds and all the decorations and stuff, that's an arguably a bigger market with more returning customers. So it's really strange because everyone thinks the bagpipe is like a niche market, and it is by definition, but it's still like a big market. There's a lot of money in it, and I think there's not a lot of people who are willing to go out and, again, maybe acquire the businesses and maybe build that legacy. I think for me, like, kind of bringing this back round is for the future, it's like, man, my want to get into property isn't because like I love bricks and mortar. It's because they make money, and I like the fact of building a business, building a portfolio, like that challenge, a sustainable business, like wealth and how to structure that business and how to control the money flow in it. That just really, really excites me. It's on a different level. And that's what's really appeals to me behind property and doing it at such a large scale.
I think I've said in the past with property is, just a really logical approach to it, that, it's usually the most expensive purchase someone makes, so there has to be the most amount of money sitting in that property. And we've seen the Sunday Times rich list, and like, I don't know, about 60-70% of the people that were on the made their money through property, and the ones that didn't made money then invested in property. So it's a fundamental wealth strategy that the wealthy use. So why not? So the big thing recently is you were on Dragon's Den a couple of weeks ago. So tell us about that experience and how it went for you.
Really cool experience. And I think the most kind of question I've had since I've been on the show is like, is it genuine? Is it as it looks on the television? And it is. It's bang on. So you don't see the dragons at all before you go out. I had to submit, I think it was like over 120 documents of due diligence to the producer, and they check over that, make sure everything's legit. They proper dig in for a good like 4 months on your business. And at that point, then they can say to the dragons before you come out the lift, well, everything they say is actually the truth. So they can make their assessment based off of, truthfully, what you've told
them. Do the dragons get a brief of your business beforehand?
I don't think so. So the first time...
It's all based on the pitch?
Exactly. The first time they see it is, I think there's a curtain or something, and then they see your display. And at this point, I'm behind the lift and getting ready to go. And you can kind of hear them like, oh, wow, there's the display and the bagpipes and all this, get your kilt on and stuff like this, and they're loving it. And then you get, then the wee green light goes on, you get into the lift, and then you're there for, well... I was there for, I thought it felt like 5 minutes, but it could have been like a minute. You're not just in the lift and out. They really like tailor when you're going in. It's really dead interesting, because it's like a show at the same time. So they need to make it entertaining. But I was happy with the edit they gave me. I was in for 50 minutes. And
50?
50, yeah. And they cut it down to like 2.5. So It was really cool. I got a lot of good advice from those investors.
What was that advice?
They gave me a full strategy. Basically, the outcome was, so I never got investment in the den. And they basically said to me, well, you've got a good partner. It's the world's largest bagpipe company. And you don't necessarily need a lot of capital because it's kind of like a commission basis. And you've already got a patent, you've got protection, you've already got customers. So you know where your customers are. So why do you need a dragon? And there was a few answers I gave, and I answered very well as to why I would need a dragon. But they said, you should be getting this person to invest in you instead. So then they gave me a full strategy on how to get investment from particular entities and things like this, which would actually support the growth of my business, which was really, really, really cool. So, and it was cool. Again, I was tweeting Deborah Meaden like a few weeks ago, and she was saying, you don't need us, Robbie, and stuff like this. So it was really cool. And,
That's incredible.
It was smart because, see, looking at the edit and stuff, it was like 2.5 minutes. I'm thinking, right, they can't make the dragons look bad. But they can't really make me look bad either, because I was just trying to smile the whole time and stuff like this, and like answered questions very well. The pitch went well, everything was perfect. So it was interesting to see their cut. It was like nobody was like prepared to pay the piper or something like this. But it was quite funny. The piper got paid, kind of thing, you know. But no, it was really interesting. They made the dragons look good. They made me look pretty good as well. So I was happy with it. Cool experience.
Which one of them impressed you the most?
I liked Sarah Davies' enthusiasm. She said in the den, once I left, or when I was about to leave, she says she's out for this investment because she doesn't understand the market or anything. But she says when I expand as an entrepreneur into any other markets, she wants to be the first to invest in me. So kind of get in touch kind of thing, you know, because it's a BBC. So really interesting. I like Tucker as well. He had a good sense of humour. They make him look a lot maybe grumpier on television, but he's top class, really good guy.
He's the babbling old guy that in the thing, but you know, he comes out with some really smart stuff. You know, when you catch the edits of it. So I mean, that must have been an amazing experience. How did it come out? I mean, was it one of those where you applied for it thinking I'll never get this, and then realised, oh shit. You know, that's a massive thing to stand in front of those guys, titans of business, and explain your business model. Yeah,
they're at a different level, you know, and the stuff they've done, the money they have. It was cool. I actually got approached to go on, so 2 years in a row. I said no the first year, and then last year I was like, well, I don't entirely need the investment. It'd be good to grow the business with it, like 100%. The exposure of being on the television and putting the bagpipes on the map. It wasn't so much putting me on the map, it was more about the bagpipes and the bagpipe industry, because as a big industry, there's a lot of engineering and design in the industry that I'm pioneering to bring that up a level. It's a high ticket item. The margins are really good in manufacturing bagpipes. So I think if you presented an investment opportunity to a private investor for the bagpipe industry, it'd be really, really, really appealing to them, I think. So I think it was all about getting them on the map, and the press off the back of that's been good. I've had an investor get in touch and things, looking to invest in things, which is good. So we'll see how that folds out.
How are you maximising that exposure and leveraging it?
I'm working with a PR agency.
Okay.
A PR agency, fantastic. They're called Story Shop, based in Glasgow, and they basically write press releases controlled, because what's happened in the past when I've won an award or something, you get people phoning you up, and the story is different each time. So what happens is you pay them, they write the press releases, they put it out to all their contacts in the industry, make sure it's consistent. The only thing they can't control is like the headline, but there's certain claims and things that that's the only thing they can kind of stick by. So it makes sure that everything's concise, and that's the best value press that I've had. And it's just purely through putting in a bit of money, making sure everything's legit, and all concise.
I mean, there's not much greater example of really putting yourself out there than putting yourself in the den in front of 5 massive entrepreneurs and having to explain yourself. That's incredible. So, wow. I mean, really, really impressive stuff, Robbie. What's next for you? So we've talked about all this sort of stuff, but we've not even talked about the fact that you're doing all this while you're still studying. You're still finishing university, product design engineering. So what's next for you over the next little while?
So thinking slightly longer term, not in the next year or so. By the time I'm 25, so 22 just now, 23, by the time I'm 25, I want to have bought a few properties and start growing that side. And that could come sooner rather than later if the right solutions are there and strategies and things, which is totally doable. So that's my primary focus and target in terms of big project. Like, this is what I want to do longer term. So for the time being, it's just looking for opportunities to enable me to do that in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, so I need to get a job that's a certain amount. I need to get a certain amount of experience, because I think when it comes to big business, if I want to be a real like key person of influence in the Scottish business scene and have a name like Sir Tom Hunter or something in the next 30 years, I need to build some like strong foundations. And by doing that, it's going to have the right position, being in the right employment post-university. So trying to get this exposure, growing Flux, because Flux isn't actually too time intensive at all. Like, I'm a product designer. I enjoy designing products. Maybe it takes me a few months to do it. Then the money's in the company. I buy the parts, or I get it manufactured, or I design it, and I've got a distributor that just deals with it all for me, you know, and I pay for that. So I don't actually do a lot anymore, which is brilliant.
So it's fairly passive. I mean, that's you know, we talk about the beauty of passive income, but you know, when you've got things systemized to a point where it doesn't need a lot of your time, you can either focus on growing that business or on the next business, you know.
Exactly, 100%.
So yeah, that's really cool, really exciting. So usually, I wrap this podcast up by a simple question, really, which is, what does real wealth mean to you in the long term, short term? You know, your clear vision for life and what wealth means to you.
I suppose I think real wealth builds two things: not just financial freedom, but time freedom and locational freedom as well. You know, if you have a property paying you X amount per month, you can be really anywhere in the world. You don't need to be tied to a place. And I think that's what really suits me. I think there's nothing wrong with putting in the graft and having a job, maybe 9 to 5 for a bit, but it's just like making sure you're not tied to one location.
I think the difference for you though is, and I can already hear it in the way that you're talking, that the job is a means to the experience 100%. As opposed to a means to the financial reward, right?
100%. So I think that's what real wealth means to me, is complete freedom in every sense, not just financial. Because again, like, you could have a job that pays like 120 grand a year, which is pretty good money, really, really good money. But you need to be in a place every single day. You know, so again, I don't really understand like having kids or having a family or building this like trust or all these kind of strategies yet, because I'm still young. I've not thought about that yet. But ultimately, in order to put myself in a position where I can do that before I have kids, that would be absolutely top class, you know.
You're building yourself up for the right sort of life, the one you want. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Robbie. It's been a great chat. Real pleasure to talk to you, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to do in the future.
Thanks, Alex.
This has been the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson. Thanks for listening, and I hope you join us on this wealth journey.